gray horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty "Hi-Yo, Silver!" The Lone Ranger. With his faithful Indian companion Tonto, the masked rider of the plains led the fight for law and order in the early western United States. The stories of his strength and courage, his daring and resourcefulness have come down to us through the generations. And nowhere in the pages of history can one find a greater champion of justice. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. From out of the past come the thundering hoofbeats of the great horse Silver. The Lone Ranger rides again.
Come on, Silver. There's danger on the trail ahead. Hi-Yo, Silver! Away!
Our story had its beginning in a great eastern metropolis. Stanley Mowbray turned from the window where he'd been watching the noisy surge of life in the street far below. At length, he spoke quietly to the elderly man before him, the man whose honest words echoed and re-echoed in Mowbray's head.
Well, there isn't anything much left to be said, Doctor. Do you mind not telling my wife, please?
As you wish, Stanley.
Now, if you'll give me your bill.
Certainly. Someday I hope to see the horrible challenge of tuberculosis accepted by the public. But so far, it's just another medical term to most people.
I know.
Most people are interested in medicine only for its immediate curative value. The money needed for the research of this thing isn't available. And with that kind of a feeling of indifference, we doctors are fighting a losing battle. Here you are. Your account stands at $235, Stanley.
200? I guess I didn't realize how long it's been piling up.
It's nearly a year since you came to me. Stanley, how would you like to go out on a job for me?
Job? I don't understand.
You can do something for me and for yourself. And possibly for a great many other people in the future.
Well, why are you tearing up the bill?
I want you to take that money and go out west, to the new Southwest Territory. The climate is extremely dry, and I believe you can get more benefit from living out there than you can here in the East, even with the medical help that is available here.
But this job you spoke about...
Oh, yes. The job will be to write me a letter once a week, telling me exactly what you're doing and how you feel.
That isn't a job.
Oh, yes, it is. You see, Stanley, I have a theory about tuberculosis. The treatment has never been given a fair trial in this country. But it has been used in Switzerland for several years.
Theory?
More than that. It's a definite plan of living. Sunshine, fresh air. The more sun, the better.
Is that all there is to the treatment?
That's the biggest part of it. Want to try it?
Nothing but sunshine, fresh air. Sounds rather... Of course, I'll do anything you suggest. Even to writing those letters you asked for.
Good.
When would you want me to go?
Immediately. I'll make all arrangements for you and your wife. It may be a strenuous trip for you.
I realize that.
And in the event of anything happens unexpectedly, I'll make a separate arrangement to ensure the safe return of your wife to the East.
You're being very kind.
No. I'm simply a very selfish medical man who is intensely interested in fighting a deadly disease. Will you help me?
Yes. I'll be ready to leave tomorrow.
Well, this is it, folks. This is Placerville, or at least what's left of it. Used to be a great mining town, but most everybody's moved on to California now. You feeling all right, mister?
Yes, thank you. Just tired.
Just tired. Here, ma'am. Let me help you there.
Thank you. I can manage all right.
Placerville isn't a very big place, is it?
Well, I don't expect you'll have any trouble getting lost, if that's what you mean. But there ain't another town within 50 miles either.
Is that the desert to the south?
Yeah. Nothing but sand for 100 miles. And off to the west, that's where the Chilkoot Range begins.
I see.
Well, you folks just go on into the hotel there and get as comfortable as you can. I'll patch your baggage in as soon as I take care of the horses.
All right.
Darling, you look terribly tired.
Well, it's been a pretty long trip, Helen. Don't worry. Everything is going to be fine.
Good long rest out here with plenty of sunshine and fresh air. That's what you need.
Sure. You'll see. In a couple of weeks, I'll look like a new man.
Gradually, the days lengthened into weeks, and Stanley Mowbray wrote regularly to his friend, the great specialist back east. The doctor replied with encouraging letters of advice and suggestions. However, the young man noticed no appreciable change in his health. He was convinced the doctor's prescription of nothing but fresh air and sunshine was of little or no value. He did his best to keep this knowledge from his wife.
Howdy, folks. Been out walking again?
The longest walk yet. Stanley's becoming a real hiker, aren't you, dear?
Well, trying awfully hard.
Where have you been today?
Place they call Thunderlode Mine or something like that.
Sure, Thunderlode. Say, you ought to get Uncle Joe Littleton to tell you some of his fancy yarns about that old mine. There's the old gent now sitting over there in that rocker.
Think I will talk to him for a while. Mind, Helen?
Not a bit, darling. I'm going upstairs and take a nice long nap. Have a nice visit.
I'll see you at dinner time. Excuse me. I understand you're Mr. Littleton.
Hey? Why, sure, that's me. Sit down, young fella. Sit down.
Thanks. My name is Mowbray, Stanley Mowbray. I'm from the East.
Yep, I know about you. You're the fella come out here for his health.
That's right.
Well, you sure look a heap healthier right now than when you landed here, I'll say. How long you been around here now, hey?
Well, nearly 6 weeks.
You sure was sickly-looking fella when you got here. Feeling any better?
Yes, thank you. My wife and I just walked up to the old Thunderlode mine this afternoon.
You did? Well, what do you know about that?
I understand you used to be connected to that mine when it was operating.
Connected is right, son. You see, I'm the fella that found the Thunderlode.
You did? I never heard about that.
Yep. Them old diggings turned out quite a chunk of ore for a spell. Richest mine that ever operated in these parts.
So I've heard. But how is it...
Oh, you mean how does it happen that old Uncle Joe is broke, sitting here waiting for a grub steak?
Excuse me, I didn't mean to...
Oh, shucks. Don't let that bother you none. I reckon everybody knows the story. When I struck that old Thunderlode mine, son, I was in too much of an all-fired hurry to see her paying out. Didn't have no capital myself, so I jumped at the first offer I got. Sold out.
Hi, Uncle Joe.
Oh, hi, Hank. Quite sprightly, thank you. Let's see, what was that? Sold out lock, stock, and barrel. Yes, it did.
Now, after the mine has been worked out.
Maybe it has, son. Maybe it ain't. Yep. Them critters come flocking in here by droves. And for a spell, they sure took a pile of gold out of the old Thunderlode. But, they didn't take all of it. No, siree.
How do you figure that, Mr. Littleton?
You called me Uncle Joe, will you, son? That Mr. Littleton business just reminds me of some people I don't like so very much.
Sure, Uncle Joe.
You see, gold is mighty queer stuff, son. Likes to make a feller sweat and slave before it lets itself get found. Now, you take that old Thunder Mountain. Big, ain't it?
Certainly is.
I've been over every inch of that mountain, 100 times more. One of these days, I'm going to pick up the vein that'll lead me right smack to the Motherlode. That is, as soon as I get me a grub stake. Of course, on the other hand, I might not never find a thing.
I'll make a bargain with you, Uncle Joe.
Yeah? What kind of bargain you talking about?
I'll grub stick you for a year if you'll take me along as your partner for 3 months.
Huh? I ain't never heard of a partner signing up for 3 months.
I expect to be leaving about that time.
What about your wife, eh?
Well, I could arrange for her to stay with Mrs. Nelson, I think.
Yeah, I reckon you could at that.
You see, I have a very good reason. Believe me, Uncle Joe.
Good reason for what? Getting rich?
Yes, I've got the best reason a man ever had.
Well, I don't know.
I've got a few $100. Enough to get us a good outfit.
Well, I'm thinking about that little woman of yours. She ain't going to like it none, being all alone here for 3 months.
I'm afraid she's going to have to get used to my being away.
Huh? Now, just what do you mean by that, eh?
According to my doctor back east, I'll be a dead man before Christmas. Now, do you understand why I'd like to help you find that Motherlode you mentioned?
Son, I reckon we better get started. You go in and tell your wife what we're figuring on. I'll mosey down to the general store and start getting us an outfit together.
A few days later, in a private room up over the 4-star cafe.
If you ask me, that old coot's up to something mighty slick. That dude from the east is right in it with him.
Nah, still think that old galoot is touched, Blackie.
Yeah? Well, what about the kid? Do you think he's touched, too?
I don't know. Kind of hard to figure him out.
Well, it looks mighty fishy to me. That fellow Mowbray coming out here and hanging around for 6-7 weeks without doing nothing. Then all at once he gets up and goes with old man Littleton.
What you driving at?
Even if the old gent is a little bit touched, don't you be forgetting that it was him found the Thunderlode in the first place.
Yeah, I know all about that.
You know what I think? I think he's probably found something again. Yes, sir. And I'll bet you that Mowbray fellow's a mining engineer or something from back east.
Oh, that don't make sense.
Well, maybe not. But if that old codger is up to something, I want to know about it. And what's more, I want to know about it first.
What do you want me to do, Blackie?
Now, listen. Those two are pulling stakes in the morning. That Mowbray moved his wife out of the hotel and over to the boarding house. So he must be figuring on being gone for quite a spell.
Yeah, looks that way, don't it?
I want you to follow them two out into the hills. Find out where they make their camp. And get back here and let me know pronto.
Sure, that won't be hard to do.
Maybe old man Littleton ain't quite as crazy as folks around here been thinking. If he does turn up another Thunderlode, there ain't nobody ever gonna know about it except you and me. You savvy?
The curtain falls on the first act of our Lone Ranger story. Before the next exciting scenes, please permit us to pause for just a few moments.
Now to continue our story. On a narrow trail winding down the steep side of Thunder Mountain, a youthful horseman reined his mount to a stop and dismounted. The forces of time and erosion had carved out a saucer-like depression in the rocks, and here a cool mountain spring beckoned invitingly to the boy and his horse.
Here we are, Victor. Steady, boy. Help yourself, boy. There's no telling how long it'll be before we find another spring like this one. Hello. Looks like we got company, Victor. Hello there.
Hey, howdy, young fella. Sure is hot, ain't it?
Well, plenty of good cold drinking water here, sir.
That's fine, boy. Reckon me and my partner here can do with some of that. Quite a climb up to here. Who are you, Sonny?
My name's Dan Reed.
Reed, eh? Used to know a fella by that name down the Panhandle. This here fella, Stan Mowbray, my partner. I'm Uncle Joe Littleton.
Glad to know you, Dan.
Yeah, here, help yourself to a drink, Stan.
Good.
Take a good one. We'll fill our water bag before that burro gets the spring all riled up.
Thanks, Uncle Joe.
You got your canteen full, eh, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Stranger in these parts, ain't you, boy?
Well, yes, I am. But I have some friends who know this country pretty well.
I've been trying to think where I knowed that fella. Reed. Down in Texas someplace. Seems like it. Sure, now I remember. The fella I knowed was named Captain Reed. He was a Texas Ranger, a great fella.
What's the matter, Dan?
Uncle Joe here, he said he knew Captain Reed of the Texas Rangers.
Yep, that's correct. Any relation?
Yeah. He's my father.
Well, you don't say so. Well, what do you know now? Ain't seen that fella for a good many years. How is he anyway?
He's dead. He was killed by some outlaws several years ago.
Why, son, I'm powerful sorry to hear that. You see, I knowed your daddy real well. Fine fella.
Well, I guess I'd better be getting along. I have to ride into town and back today.
We've been prospecting out here for the last month or so. Got a camp right over on yonder ridge. You and your friends come over and see us if you can.
Thanks. We might do that.
Dan, if you're going into town, would you mind doing me a favor?
Oh, I'll be glad to if I can.
My wife is staying at Mrs. Nelson's place. Would you just drop by and tell her you saw me and everything's all right?
Why, sure. I'd be glad to do it for you.
Thanks a lot. And, Dan, tell her I hope to have some news for her soon. Some great news.
Yep, that's right. You tell her we're likely to be coming back to town soon any day now with some extra good news.
I'm sure your wife would be glad to know, Mr. Mowbray. I'll tell her what you said. Perhaps I can get my friends to ride over here with me tonight after I get back from town.
Well,
come on, Victor.
Goodbye, young fella.
Bye, Dan.
Goodbye. Get up, Victor.
That boy's a great youngster, Stan.
Yes. He's got the makings of a great man. Was it all right for me to give him that message to my wife?
Yeah, of course it was. You can trust that boy.
If my wife only knew how much I'm hoping and praying that we're right.
Don't you worry, boy. We're right this time. Just as right as rain.
Well, let's get back to the diggings.
Sure. And if I know anything at all about gold prospecting, we're going to uncover the greatest motherlode this country's ever seen.
Doesn't seem possible somehow.
What we found so far ain't nothing. Nothing at all. But the sign is there, boy. And when we blast that tunnel, you're going to see the Motherlode, or my name ain't Joe Littleton.
Let's go, Uncle Joe. All at once, I feel stronger than I've felt in years. Let's go.
And you say this old prospector knew your father, Dan?
That's what he said, sir. Said he knew him as a Texas Ranger. And the other fellow, he's very young, doesn't look very strong. I found out in town when I spoke to his wife that he came out west for his health.
That's a strange partnership.
And his wife, Mrs. Mowbray, she didn't exactly say so, but I think she's worried about him. And there's a fellow in town that's been pestering her lately. Came up while I was talking to her in a store.
Oh, Dan, I want to thank you so much for bringing Stanley's message to me. I was getting worried about him. How did he look?
Well, he looked pretty tired, Miss Mowbray. But I could see that he was mighty anxious to get back and tell you about that good news, whatever it is.
Howdy, Miss Mowbray. Did I hear this young one say he'd seen your husband?
Yes, that's right, Mr. Nesbitt.
Well, now, don't get peeved with me, ma'am. I'm just trying to be friendly. In fact, I'd like it a whole lot better if you just call me Blackie like most folk around here.
Excuse me, Mr. Nesbitt, I must be going. Dan, would you like to walk over to Mrs. Nelson's with me?
Oh, sure, you bet. Here, I'll carry your package for you.
That man makes me nervous. He's been watching me for days and days, just watching. So we were waiting for something to happen. I'm afraid of him, Dan.
Don't worry, Mrs. Mowbray. I'm going to tell my friend about this.
Your friend?
Yeah. The greatest friend anybody ever had. The Lone Ranger.
Blackie Nesbitt's interest in what Uncle Joe Littleton does is quite obvious.
What do you mean?
He thinks the old man is after gold. He probably is.
Then why does he bother Mrs. Mowbray?
I don't know, Dan. But from what you've told me of her husband, I think he's searching for something far more valuable than gold.
Well, it's more than gold. Gosh.
You know where that mine is, Dan?
Sure.
Well, we'll go over there tomorrow morning. I'd like for you to get Mr. Mowbray aside so I can talk to Uncle Joe alone. Uncle Joe!
Who's there? That you, Stanley? Thought you went for a walk with Dan Reed.
I'm not Stanley, Uncle Joe. May I talk to you for a moment?
It's so blamed dark in this shaft, I can't. Why, you're wearing a mask.
I don't think you know me, Uncle Joe, but I've heard a lot about you.
You have? Seems like I've heard something about a fella that wears a mask, too. Say, you ain't the Lone Ranger, are you?
I might be. Uncle Joe, will you tell me something truthfully?
If you're who I think you are, I don't know why not.
Good. You really think you'll discover another vein here in the Motherlode?
Never can tell. We'll know tomorrow when we blast through the hard rock.
Do you like Stanley Mowbray, your partner?
Oh, first rate. Ain't very strong for a young fellow his age.
Yes, I know. Uncle Joe, if there is gold underneath that hard rock, it'll still be there 6 months from now, won't it?
Why, sure, I guess it will. Why?
You can give your partner something of far greater value than all the gold in the world, if you wait.
Oh, that don't make sense.
Yes, it does. And think of some job that will keep Mowbray busy above ground all the time, so that he's out in the sun every day.
The sun? What's that got to do with it?
I think I know why Mowbray came west. I'm also pretty sure that his principal reason for wanting to find gold is so he could leave security for his wife.
You talk like the fella might be going to die.
There is a possibility, but it will be much less if you postpone that blasting through the hard rock. Will you do it?
Why, sure I will. To tell the truth, I ain't so sure there's gold down there, but when Stanley offered to grub stake me...
Yes, I know. You're a born prospector, Uncle Joe.
Can't blame me for trying.
Oh, of course not. Incidentally, there's another man very interested in your gold mine.
Yeah? Who's that?
Blackie Nesbitt.
Nesbitt? Why, that low-down sneaking coyote.
For you to blast through the hard rock, too. It'll do him good to wait.
I'll fix that critter's hash.
I thought you'd be able to take care of it. Thanks for your promise about Stanley Mowbray, Uncle Joe. Will you shake hands on it?
Sure will. Put her there.
Thanks. Adios.
A silver bullet. He left a silver bullet in my hand. Doggone, that was the Lone Ranger.
As the months went by, Stanley Mowbray spent all of his time working in a little clearing at the entrance to the mine. He'd been puzzled by Uncle Joe's sudden decision not to blast into the hard rock, but he decided that the old miner's judgment must be better than his own. Finally, the day came when the blast was to be set.
Well, Uncle Joe, today's the day, isn't it?
That's right, Stanley. Won't be very long now till we know whether we're rich men or just a couple of darn fools.
You may laugh at me for saying this, but I really don't care whether we find any gold.
Kind of changed your mind, ain't you, son?
More than my mind has changed. Have you noticed that I can work all day now, swinging an axe or using a hammer? I don't get tired anymore.
Yeah. Seems like I have noticed you've been pretty chipper lately.
I made a mistake when I told you I was going to die. I'm going to live.
Looking at you, son, I can sure believe it. He was right. Turned out just like he said.
You mean my doctor?
Oh, I wasn't thinking of him. Another fellow. Don't think you know him. Well, Stanley, might as well go into the shaft and light that fuse.
Yes. Who's this?
Blackie Nesbitt, the sneaking sidewinder.
Hold it.
Hi, Uncle Joe. Heard you were blasting through. Thought I'd drop around.
We can get along without you, Blackie.
I don't think so. I'm staying and I'm cutting myself in.
You heard what Uncle Joe said. Now get out.
Well, look who's talking. The gent that has to rest every time he walks over 2 or 3 feet.
You're mistaken. That's a habit I've overcome.
Yeah? Well, see if either one of you can overcome this.
Watch out, Stanley. He's got a gun.
I see it. And I'm sure I've got the answer for Mr. Nesbitt.
Jump in, Juniper. Stanley, you knocked him cold, and with a punch like a mule.
I can hardly believe it. I actually can hit that hard.
Wait here just a minute, son. I'm going to set off that blast. Well, Stanley, that did it.
Have you looked at the ore? Is there any gold?
Don't need to look at it. I've known for a long time there wasn't any gold here. Just kept digging it for the fun of it.
Well, aren't you disappointed, Uncle Joe?
Prospectors never disappointed, Stanley. There's always another drift and another load.
Well, it seems so unfair. I really gained something. You haven't.
Yes, I have.
What's that?
I shook hands with a certain gent I've always wanted to meet. And I've got a silver bullet to bring me luck.
The story you have just heard is a copyrighted feature of the Lone Ranger Incorporated.